Most info and coaching companies are sitting on an extra 30 to 50% in revenue and they don't even know it. They're stuck in this hamster wheel of trying to scale ads, trying to get more leads, bring in more sales reps and scale the front end when the real money is sitting right behind them in their existing customer base. And in this video, I'm breaking down the exact systems that you can use to increase your revenue by 30, 40, 50% without having to spend an extra single dollar on ads. Now, if you don't know who I am, I'm Max Bates. I run MGB Growth. Over the last couple of years, I've sold multiple 8 figures in sales for info and coaching companies by building their sales and operations infrastructure to power the things we're about to go over. So my goal for today is hopefully to help you learn from some of my mistakes and just see what's worked for us so that you can implement it into your business. So let's get into it. So let's start with what most businesses don't understand, first of all, about their back-end revenue. When you sell a customer on the front end for, let's say, $10,000, and let's say you're spending $2,500 to acquire that customer and you're paying $1,500 to the sales reps, 15% of this unit price, and let's say you're spending $1,000 to fulfill. Your total margin comes up to 50% on that, right? You're contracting, let's say you're selling 10 units, that'd be $100,000 in total cash. You're gonna spend $50,000 to acquire and fulfill that customer, right? But when you either renew or upsell or cross-sell that same customer, you have zero extra acquisition costs. You're not spending on ads, you're not spending commissions on the front end. For the sales team, you're just paying to fulfill. So let's use the same $10,000 sale as an example. You have no cost to fulfill. You're not paying any commission on it. You're just paying the same $1,000 to fulfill. This might even be less, maybe it's lower depending on the offer that you have, but now that's a 90% margin on these new sales. So the math is super simple. Back-end sales are obviously infinitely more profitable. And on top of that, it is much easier to sell to your existing customers already. This is what most businesses look like with their acquisition and delivery process. It starts with acquisition, whether they're posting content, running ads, whatever the case is. Then you got to pay your sales team, where they go through the sales cycle, and then they get delivered on. Most people just loop back into here, right? All right, let's find new customers, let's sell new customers, and let's deliver on new customers. Meanwhile, there's tons of cash being thrown away. Now, if you want a full run through of this, read Money Models or something by Hormozi so you can get the full run through. But the way we implement this into coaching businesses or info businesses, it can either be incorporated into onboarding, activation, whatever their point of next struggle is, or their whatever the next problem surfaces when they expire, or a new offer launch. And this is kind of in order of at least the suggested kind of, or at least the places I would suggest putting them first. A lot of people wait until someone expires or they're done, fulfilling on the product, and then they try and resell them again, maybe at a discount. But it's not the right way to do things. But it's a lot more difficult to sell a customer on working with you again after they've gone through the entire life cycle of working with you, right? It's going to be a lot easier to upsell someone or cross-sell someone when they're excited. They just finished buying something. They're excited to get started. So initiating that in your onboarding is probably going to be the easiest one. The next one after that would be activation. So this is their first big win, right? Let's say you have, any kind of make money offer. Let's say a trading offer, for example. If someone makes their first dollar trading with you, that's a pretty big activation point. It's their first big win. They feel like they've accomplished something. They're much more likely to buy something at that point rather than waiting, 6 months, 12 months, whatever it is, to try and resell them on the same product, right? They probably have something else they need help with. Maybe they've, if it's a make money offer, they probably have funds to use now to invest into something else. Or the next point of that would be any kind of point of struggle. So when they start to get friction in whatever your product is, or the next problem kind of surfaces. Let's say you run a lead gen agency, you're getting people leads and calls on their calendar. The next problem that comes after that is being able to close them, as an example, right? So maybe on a weight loss offer, a workout plan and a nutrition guide and all that, but then they actually need accountability or something afterwards. We got random examples here, but whenever the next point of struggle or the next problem starts to surface is when you can inject another potential upsell, cross-sell, downsell, whatever. It'll be easier to do so in these first 3. Waiting until they expire, unless it really makes sense for your offer, I wouldn't wait all the way until the end to try and resell them, but it's obviously still an opportunity to try and re-enroll them, get them to buy the next offer. And then this is kind of separate, but if you are launching a new offer of any kind, or you have a new product release, and you can always offer it to your existing customer base first, as they're much more likely to buy. So I'll give you some more tangible examples of what the flows of this would actually look like. So on the onboarding side, let's say someone is closed on the call, they sign the contract. You may or may not have automation set up to handle all your onboarding, but I'd suggest building some sort of delivery or client success base. I'll show you what ours looks like in a little bit. I can make a full other video on this, but you're going to add them into your delivery or client success base wherever you manage your clients. They're given the key deliverables or access. So whether you invite them into Slack or you give them a Drive folder or you're adding calendars or calls onto their calendar, whatever the case might be. From there, maybe you have an onboarding form sent to them. What we'd like to do is capture this key info. So where are they starting? Where do they want to go? Also just knowing why they wanted to work with us in the first place, what motivated them to buy from us is obviously helpful. That all gets logged in the customer base as well, where the client success team can see everything. From there, onboarding message is sent or an email message is is sent with a link to their onboarding call. And then from there, client success takes that onboarding call, and using the info from their form and just from through talking to them, they can make an offer to up or cross-sell them. All this to say, this process should be baked into delivery, right? It shouldn't just be a random fly by the seat of your pants, let's try and resell people as they pop up. It's much easier to build an actual infrastructure for this so that whenever you bring a new client on, you know that they're going to be offered something 4, 5, 6 times, whatever the case is, to increase their LTV and get them to buy something else at obviously a much higher margin for you, because you're not paying any extra cost to acquire in terms of like an ad spend perspective, and you're not paying sales team commissions on this because they're all sold through the back end. Maybe you give your client success team a little kickback if they are, really doing a good job with this, or to incentivize them to do so. But that's an example of what onboarding would look like. Okay, moving on to the next activation point. We like to have a lot of our offers include some kind of like progress form, because obviously this is good data to track, see how fast people are hitting activation, and just make sure people stay on track. Also helps client success team, but we have it in here where, again, it's just baked into it. So once this progress form is completed and we can see that they've hit their first activation point, which again, this will be very offer specific, but if we use that trading example again, maybe we have a field in that form that says like, how much money did you make from trading this week? Something like that, right? As soon as that first dollar comes across, all right, now we know it's a good opportunity for us to step in and offer them the next thing. We're going to update them in the delivery client success base. Again, client success team will be notified and or potentially send over that person a progress call link, or however you want to bake this into your offer. Again, this is offer specific. And then the client success manager or whoever it is will take that call and then make the offer to upsell, cross sell, whatever. Again, it's just going to be a lot easier because now, like in this portion, this person's super excited. They just took this big investment into themselves. They're excited to start this new chapter. They're at their peak of their excitement. So they're much more likely to buy. Once someone hits their first activation point and they got a real result from your offer for the first time, right? It's going to be easier to sell again because you've just proven yourself that you know what you're doing. Moving on to the next problem that surfaces. Again, it's all going to be based off this progress form, and you can incorporate this however you like. I'm just giving you baseline examples here, but you can have a field in there that's able to somehow indicate, if they've reached the next milestone or the next point of friction. Even if it's something as simple as just saying like, what did you struggle with this week? If they mention the main kind of next problem that most of your customers face, then that's another opportunity to step in. And how you set this up is entirely up to you. Again, I'll show you a couple examples in a second here. But once that happens, again, we're updating them in delivery client success base, tracking the data, making it visible for the client success team. They'll be notified. Progress call will be sent to them again to book in. And then again, client success takes that call and makes an offer to up or cross sell. Just positioning it as like, hey, you've done 1, 2, and 3 steps. You're struggling with getting to this 4th one. We have this other thing that helps you get there in half the time, or whatever the case is. Moving on to expiry. So this is kind of last resort. Your conversion percentages of these are likely going to be lower than the rest of them, but I would still incorporate it regardless. Once they've reached their expiry in this base, and this is why this is pretty important, we just base this off of whenever they sign a contract. If we know it's a 6-month engagement, for example, then we will just put a little formula. We use Airtable for ours for 6 months after the initial contract sign date. That's when their window of fulfillment, essentially. We also have it set so that it will flag it 2 weeks before expiry so that we can step in, and that way client success team knows this person's supposed to expire soon. We can start to position them for re-enrollment or an upsell or cross-sell or whatever. So again, client success team and the client themselves are both notified that, hey, you're reaching the end of your contract soon. And then we have usually some kind of like audit call or performance review call. I wouldn't call it like an exit call or, an offboarding call or something. And I wouldn't have these with the closers if the closers have not been involved at all in delivery, because the person's going to look back and say, okay, hey, I spoke to this guy when I first made a purchase. I gave him a bunch of money and now I'm having a call with him again. I wonder what this is for. Your show rate for these calls will probably be substantially lower than if you were to have it with, the same coach or one of the same coaches that they've been working with, or even if it's you up until this point throughout delivery. And then on that call, take it. And again, we make an offer to re-enroll or to up or cross-sell. And then lastly, for the new offer launch, again, this, I wouldn't suggest just like launching new offers all over the place. Eventually you'll exhaust your audience. But if you've been selling the same core offer for a few months or a couple years or a few years, and you're coming out with something new, or even if it's just a different vertical of what you already sell, then it's always going to be easier to sell that to your existing customer base rather than having to go out and find new people to buy it. Because again, you've already spent the money to acquire them. You've already spent commissions on it. All you need to spend on is the cost to fulfill, right? So from there, we usually like to have some kind of email sequence sent to both the active and especially the expired clients if we're no longer in communication with them. From there, client success, either they'll whisper about it. It depends on if you know exactly what the offer is going to be, or if you're just trying to come up with an offer that people really want. You can either get feedback from the existing clients of like, hey, what would be really good for you if we were to release something? What would you want to see in this new product that would really help you right now? So you can kind of get feedback from your clients that way. Your client success team can whisper about it and like let people know that it's coming soon, kind of build some hype around it, and then they can actually make offers to their existing clients to buy that. And I would make this a pretty heavy sequence to tag on top of it. And then obviously they upsell or cross-sell from there. So that's kind of a few basic examples of how you can incorporate it into delivery so that you're not just, again, trying to sling it randomly and hope that people rebuy or buy something new. You know that as soon as someone comes in, you might be spending that same $2,500 to acquire them, but you know that the likelihood they do upsell, cross-sell, downsell, whatever is much higher because every single person's being put through that same process. Now, I'll give you a quick example, and again, I can make a full video on this because it's quite extensive, but just to give you a brief idea of how you can set this up, whether you do it in Airtable or Sheets, entirely up to you. We like Airtable, but every single piece of information, this goes on for a lot more rows, and there's 22 hidden fields in here. So there's a lot of extra info that we capture, but this is a way for you, one, just to see where everyone is. It's a base for your client success team and or you to operate out of to know where everyone is. But we have formulas baked into multiple different fields so that we can see if there is an ascension opportunity. Again, we're tracking these client check-in forms, for example, we're tracking their progress. On the onboarding form, we're tracking key information there as well, tracking how many calls they've gotten, how many calls they've exercised, all kinds of stuff. But essentially this allows us to have a field for like each deliverable. So for example, like with this offer, rather, they're given access to Kajabi. There's a bunch of course access in there. We create templates out of a bunch of different tracking documents for them. We're just making sure they got all of that. But then we also have fields in here that are tied back to these forms. And if you have drop downs and stuff, especially, then you can just wire a formula into there where it's like this person said, they've reached X milestone or they've hit X problem or whatever the case is. That will then update your base, and then you can have automations wired off of that so that it would notify your client success team. It can send them a message automatically. You can send them a calendar. This basically just becomes a very systematic and automatic process so that no one slips through the cracks once they're actually onboarded and you're trying to upsell them. So I'll give you a quick little math breakdown of this to try and hopefully make it tangible. So some slightly more realistic numbers in here. Obviously, we're talking about a $10,000 offer up here, but most people, I'm assuming, are not going to be paying in full unless you have a really good AOV. But let's assume that it's 50% of what your total unit value is, or your total product value. So if you were to sell 50 units at a $5,000 AOV, let's say they're all worth $10,000 contracted, then that would be $250,000 in front-end cash or upfront cash, and you'd have $500K contracted. So an additional $250. This should be total contracted. From there, you're spending the same $2,500 to acquire this client. And again, these numbers can change a little bit just to illustrate the point, but you're going to spend a total of $125,000 to acquire these customers, right? If you're paying $1,500 per unit to the sales team, again, assuming they've paid the entire amount, then you'll pay, if we're just using industry standards here, 15% to the sales team. That would be a total of $75,000 spent on the sales side, and then you've got $1,000 per unit to fulfill, right? So this would be a total of $50,000, which means that you would spend a total of $250,000 to make $500. This is, again, assuming if your payment plan completion rate is 100%, which it likely isn't, but we're being optimistic here. Your margin on that would be 50%, okay? Now, if we were to look at the numbers with a proper process, so we implemented everything we just went over, got the same 50 units at a 5K AOV, same 10K contracted, same 250 front end and 500 contracted, same CAC, same sales team cost, same cost to fulfill, still spending the same $250. But if we were able to upsell, cross-sell, or resell 30% of our customers, and let's say it's $7,500 total value. This can be lower or higher. It can be entirely dependent on your offer, but this is, again, just for the sake of showing you the power of this. If you're selling 30% of people, so this would be 15 different units at $7,500 total value, that's an extra $112.5 thousand into your pocket. And there's zero cost to acquire, $0 to the sales team. And let's assume it's the same $1,000 to fulfill per unit. You're going to spend $15,000 now to make $112.5 grand. Okay, so your total cash goes from $500,000 to $612.5 thousand, which is a 22.5% increase. Customer LTV goes from 10 to 12.25, and your profit goes from 250 to 347,500, which is a 39% increase. So hopefully you can start to see the power of incorporating proper backend offers and selling systems into your business and not just letting customers slip through the cracks all over the place. You can stop focusing on just more ads, more leads, more sales calls, and start to see that the real leverage is in the backend. Because when you build a proper infrastructure around payment collection and renewals and ascension and everything we just went over, you're not just increasing your revenue, like you're fundamentally changing the economics of your business. You make yourself way more profitable. Again, you can go and read money models for more examples of exactly how to do this, but how to incorporate it into your info coaching business. Hopefully this helps it make it a bit more tangible, and you can start to see the opportunities for you to plug it into your business. Because at the end of the day, I mean, you're collecting more cash up front, which gives you more fuel to grow. You're maximizing your LTV now. You're creating predictable recurring revenue that is not dependent on spending more money every single month. You're not having to go and find new customers every month. And again, these numbers numbers are even more adjustable. Like if you're able to continue to sell people over and over, then obviously your LTV continues to go up, continue to keep high margins, continue to keep costs to acquire customers low, and just become way more profitable as a business overall. All this to say, it's not always about having better marketing. I know it's the shiny thing that everyone wants to solve, and it's, it's what's fun to listen to and what's fun to talk about. But these are, the hairy things. Building these proper systems a lot of times are what makes a big difference. And this is just from my experience stepping into a bunch of companies. That's all they did was just focus on getting the upfront stuff down. And then once someone was in the door, they were completely forgotten about. And if you want our help implementing all of these different systems and having us build this actual infrastructure for you to help you maximize everything and make your business much more profitable, then there will be a link in the description for you below. Somewhere you can apply, see what it would look like to work with us. But I hope this was helpful. I hope it makes you a bunch of money, and I'll see you in the next one.